Almost 25 years ago, when I was probably 8, my family moved into this large old house that was probably built in the early 1900s. It was a two-story Victorian-style house that had laundry chutes that led to a large concrete basement where the washing machine and dryer were. There was this weird room in the basement that seemed out of place and disturbing. It was a room no larger than a closet with an old claw foot tub and shower head and a way to padlock it from the outside, but no way to lock it from the inside. I still think about this room and wonder why it was set up like this. The house had a mostly good feeling to it, except for the basement. Eventually, my very superstitious stepmom became so uncomfortable going to the basement to do laundry that she made my dad convert the mudroom to a laundry room so she wouldn't have to go downstairs anymore. Dad thought she was being ridiculous, but he did it anyway. We lived in the house for a few years, and at some point the feeling in the house started to lift. Little things started happening, nothing too concerning though. My stepsister eventually started to feel really uncomfortable in her room upstairs. She said she felt like someone was watching her when she slept and she had a hard time sleeping. She started sleeping more during the day on the couch in the living room, or she would sleep in the room with me. Our cats would act funny. They'd puff up with pupils full and stare at seemingly nothing. Just little things that were freaky, but nothing too crazy. One day my stepmom took me with her to pick up some lunch for everyone, and when we were driving towards the house, I could vividly see someone wearing all black, like a full-on cape, standing in my stepsister's window, watching us. My stepmom saw it too, and she freaked out and had my dad and stepbrother search the whole house. They found nothing, thought we were being paranoid, and figured we had seen a shadow or something. Well, eventually my dad and stepbrother start feeling uneasy in the house too. Sometimes you could hear what sounded like someone walking up the basement stairs, and my dad, well, he would grab a bat and be ready to confront whoever it was. Well, this sort of thing continued for a while. I've asked my dad about this, and he said, man, that house would freak me out. I'd hear those footsteps, and I'd grab a flashlight and a bat. I'd puff my chest up, open that door, and run down the stairs swinging, ready to kill whatever was there. It got to the point where everyone was on edge in that house. The final straw of us moving was when my stepbrother went to open a window in his room upstairs, and both of his arms went straight through the window. The last time I talked to him was a couple years ago, but even then, he still swears someone pushed him, despite being the only person upstairs. He had to be rushed to the emergency room where they had to remove huge shards of glass from his arms and stitch him back up. He has gnarly scars from it too. We moved from that house, and eventually the old lady that owned it sold it. I don't think she could keep tenants for very long, but that's just me speculating. Where the house sat is a car dealership. Supposedly, the house itself was moved from the property and is still somewhere in the town I live in. I've never seen it though, and I have no interest in finding it. I grew up in a really old house that my mom inherited from her parents. Since it was pretty old, the house grew organically over the decades as more rooms were added as needed, so that by the time we moved there, it was pretty big. I have several older siblings, so the bedroom assignments changed a lot over the years as they moved out to go to college, and by the time I was in junior high, the only ones living there besides my parents were me and one of my brothers, who was at the time a college freshman, but still lived at home because his college was located in the same city. Well, anyway, this one weekend my parents were out of town and only me and my brother were home, but he was out partying with his friends, so I was home alone on a Saturday night playing with my Super NES in my bedroom. Now, my bedroom was upstairs and had two entrances, one that led to the hallway and another one that led to a staircase that led to a sort of attic whose function had often changed over the years from a bedroom for some of my siblings to a TV room, entertainment center, to a place to store stuff, and back again, and so on, as needed. At the time this took place, it was being used more like a traditional attic, and it was full of old junk and all the stuff my older siblings had left behind after moving out, but they hadn't yet gotten around to taking to their respective homes. So there I was playing video games when, at around 1 a.m., I start hearing someone whispering from the other side of the door that led to the attic room. "Tom Scott, Tom Scott, open up." Now, that room had another entrance that led to the garage, so I figured my brother was back from partying and that he was drunk and had decided to pull a prank on me and scare me. So I decided to scare him in return. Since the door was locked on my side, I decided to make my way around by going downstairs and stealthily entering the attic from behind and scaring the crap out of my drunk brother. Thing is, when I got to the kitchen, I could see through the window in the door that led to the garage that my brother's car wasn't there. I went to our front door to check if his car was parked outside in our driveway, but it wasn't. Since I had a pretty good view of our block on either direction from there, unless he'd parked around the block as part of his prank, he clearly wasn't home yet. Unless he had gotten a bit drunk and decided to leave his car behind and get a ride home, I wasn't going to fall for that. So I went in the garage still thinking it was a prank, but when I got to the door that led to the staircase that led to the attic-like room, I could see that it was not only closed, but also locked from my side. Puzzled, I went back to my room, turned on the lights, unpaused my game, and went back to playing. The whispers kept calling me by name and insisting that I should open the door for a while longer, but I simply pretended I didn't hear anything because I just didn't know what else to do. I was 14 years old or so at the time, and my brain was struggling with making sense of what was going on because either someone that somehow knew my name and for some reason was using both my first and middle name when addressing me, had broken into my attic and gotten trapped there somehow, or something even weirder was going on. This was back when cell phones weren't a thing, as you might surmise from the fact that I was playing with a Super NES, so I couldn't call my brother or anything like that, and calling the cops from our landline never even crossed my mind as a valid option. I mean, what was I going to say? Well, after like 20 minutes, the whispers finally stopped, and at around 3 a.m., my brother got home, still a bit buzzed from his night out, and I asked him if he had come home earlier and tried to prank me, but he was genuinely confused and got even more scared than me when I told him the story. Well, we ended up sleeping in his room that night because neither of us wanted to be alone, regardless of the fact that he was already a grown man at the time. Nothing more happened that night, and I never experienced anything quite like that ever again in that house, though there were some other strange things over the years. I'm not really a believer in the supernatural, but to this day, I have no idea what the hell was going on that night, and I sometimes wonder what would have happened if I opened the door. I feel I'm mostly a logical person and believe in science stuff, but this experience makes me totally believe in supernatural forces because, well, I can't explain it. When I was about 8 or 9, I went to a school friend's house for dinner. He had a cool house which backed onto this big field in our town. The field was mostly open, save for a few bushes and a hill, which at the top had a big tree with a rope swing and loads of thick bushes behind the tree. It was summertime, and after dinner, around 6 p.m., we went into the field to go play on the rope swing at the top of the hill. Now, just a quick side note. A few months before, I'd been at the same friend's house, and he introduced me to a friend called Liam. Well, I changed the name even though it probably doesn't matter. Okay, back to the day in question. We were heading along the field towards the rope swing when I spotted this guy on the rope swing wearing all black. He was standing on the bit of wood, the part where you're meant to sit on, swinging back and forth and beckoning, waving towards us with a hand gesture. I said, "Oh, that looks like Liam," and my friend agreed, and we quickened our pace. Liam was still waving at us. As we got a bit closer, I realized he was actually giving us the FU symbol with his fingers while also beckoning for us to join him with the same hand. Liam was a jerk, so this was kind of his character. As we went up the hill, there were some bushes we had to move around. And after we got past the bushes, we realized that Liam wasn't there anymore. We thought, well, maybe he was hiding behind the tree. But we got right up to the rope swing and looked around, and he wasn't there. The thing is, there was nowhere else for him to go. Behind the tree, there was a huge bush that was too thick and prickly to hide in, and that backed onto a big brick wall that surrounded a private property at the top of the hill. Looking around from the top of the hill, you could see basically the whole field below. Most of the bushes in the field were too small to hide behind, and there was no way he could have snuck past us on the way up. I was like, I'm sure I saw someone up here, and my friend agreed, but there was no one, and the rope swing was perfectly still, like as if nobody had used it in a while. I thought, maybe this is a trick of the light or my imagination, but that's not the creepy part. At school, a few months later, we were asked to write a short story about an interesting experience we'd had in our lives. Well, I decided to write about the weird situation with the rope swing and what I saw. I mean, we were like 9 years old. This was probably the most interesting thing that's happened to me. A couple of days later, myself, my friend, and two other boys who lived in the same town as us were all asked to stay behind with the teacher at lunch break. She demanded to know why we had all copied each other and whose idea it was, and how we thought that 4 people giving in the same work wouldn't go unnoticed by her. We were all like, what are you talking about? She then handed us our stories from a few days before. We had all written about the exact same experience and had very similar stories. We all mentioned about it being a summer's evening around 6 p.m., seeing a guy on the rope swing dressed in black doing the FU symbol with his fingers and then disappearing when we got closer. The thing is, I could maybe understand my friend writing the same thing, but 2 other boys from the same town, and one of those boys didn't like my friend. So I can't imagine they'd come up with some weird conspiracy to make me look stupid, which would be extra weird considering we all got in trouble too. And they weren't that good of actors. They all looked genuinely confused. One of them asked if I had copied him, and I was like, how? I don't even sit near you. And we all spoke about it, and we discovered that we had all had similar experience, but on totally different days, except me and my friend, because we were together. One of them had seen it while walking his dog with his parents. Another had seen it while playing with some other non-school friends in the field. Our teacher, of course, didn't believe that we had all genuinely had those experiences. To this day, I just can't explain it. If I tell people this story, they think it's bull crap. But I'm telling you, it happened. And since then, I've believed in ghosts because I swear that's what we must have seen.